This is a story about a man who spent 60 hours at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean and the divers who came to collect his body and found him alive instead. Harrison Okene was 29 years old and working as a cook on a tugboat called the Jascon 4. The boat operated out of Nigeria, doing the unglamorous but essential work of the offshore oil industry, securing tankers, running supplies, holding things in place so that the enormous machinery of deep-sea oil extraction could function. It was dangerous work in the way that all maritime work in those waters was dangerous. But it was also routine. Harrison had been doing it long enough that the danger had faded into the background, the way danger always does when nothing has gone wrong for long enough. On the morning of May 26, 2013, he woke early, said his prayers, and went to the bathroom. It was around 5 in the morning, still dark outside, the Atlantic heaving in heavy swells driven by a storm that had been building through the night. Harrison was in his boxer shorts, half asleep, thinking about his leave. 3 more days, and he'd be home. Then the wave hit. Not a wave in the ordinary sense. A wall of water, massive and sudden, slamming into the Jascon 4 with a force that was not a weather event, but a verdict. The boat didn't rock. It rolled, all the way over, past the point of return, the world inverting in seconds as 12 men were thrown from their beds, their posts, their ordinary Tuesday morning lives, into the cold, black chaos of a sinking ship. The speed was what Harrison remembered. Not the sound, not the fear, the speed. One moment he was standing. The next, the floor was the ceiling and the water was everywhere, and the boat was going down fast, dragging everything with it into the dark. He didn't run toward the exit. He couldn't. The corridor was a wall of rushing water, moving with the kind of force that doesn't negotiate. He pushed against it anyway, muscled through a bulkhead into the officers' quarters, heard the shouts of other crew members somewhere in the flooding dark, shouts that would stop, one by one, in the minutes that followed. He reached the bathroom adjoining the captain's cabin, and the door handle broke off in his hand. He was trapped, 30 meters below the surface and sinking, locked inside a bathroom on a capsized tugboat in his underwear in the dark. Then he looked up. The boat had flipped completely upside down. In the chaos of the inversion, in a bathroom measuring roughly 4 feet across, a pocket of air had formed at what was now the ceiling, which had, minutes ago, been the floor. A bubble. A small, impossible 4-foot bubble of breathable air pressed against the hull of a sinking ship. He had no idea for how long. He found 2 life jackets and 2 flashlights in the adjacent cabin. He lashed the life jackets together and laid them across a submerged surface to create a platform, something to keep his body partially above the freezing water, to delay the hypothermia that would otherwise have taken him within hours. He switched the flashlights on sparingly, preserving the batteries. He rationed what little he had, a few cans of Coca-Cola he found floating nearby, warm and flat but wet. He drank them slowly over 3 days. And then he waited. The darkness was absolute. Not the manageable darkness of a power outage or a windowless room. The total pressurized darkness of the deep ocean, the kind that makes no concession to the human need for light. Harrison could not see his own hand in front of his face. He counted time by feel, by the rhythm of his own breathing, by the prayers he recited from a psalm his wife had sent him by text message before the voyage. He repeated it until the words stopped being words and became something else entirely. A rhythm, a rope, something to hold in the dark. He heard his crewmates dying. Not directly. But he heard what came after. The sounds of fish moving through the flooded sections of the boat, feeding. He knew what it meant. He had been on the water long enough to know. He lay in his air pocket in the dark and listened to the ocean taking his friends and could do nothing, while the Atlantic did what it does. Above the surface, the world had already moved on. The Jascon 4 had sent a mayday before it went down. Nigerian rescue services had responded, but the storm had made any immediate operation impossible. And by the time the weather cleared, the ship was 30 meters down and upside down, and the assumption was that there were no survivors. 12 men had been aboard. 12 men had almost certainly drowned. The priority now was recovery. A South African diving company called DCN Diving was contracted to do the work. Their team descended to the Jascon 4 3 days after the sinking, on May 29th. They found the wreck exactly as expected. Upside down, dark, flooded, a sunken ship doing what sunken ships do. They began the grim work of entering the vessel and recovering the crew. They found bodies. 3 of them in the first sections they entered, exactly where you would expect to find the bodies of men who had drowned when their ship sank. The work was difficult and sad and unsurprising. Then one of the divers, Nico van Heerden, moved deeper into the vessel. Harrison had heard them. He had heard the knocking against the hull as the divers worked, had seen the thin beam of a dive light filtering through the water, and he understood, not immediately, not without the disorientation of 60 hours in absolute darkness, that something was happening above him. He moved toward the light. He reached out through the water in the direction of the diver, and gently, deliberately gently, because he understood that what he was about to do could end very badly if he startled the man. Then he withdrew his hand and waved. Nico van Heerden saw a hand come out of the darkness and touch him, and then pull back. The dive camera mounted on his helmet caught the moment. Then he moved toward the hand and found Harrison Okene standing chest deep in water in a 4-foot air pocket, alive, after 60 hours at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. "I would say someone was looking after him," Van Heerden said afterward. "How it wasn't full of water is anyone's guess. But it wasn't over. Getting Harrison out was its own crisis. After 60 hours at 30 meters depth, his body had absorbed enormous quantities of nitrogen, far more than the human body can safely release at once. Bringing him straight to the surface would have killed him immediately. The nitrogen would have come out of solution in his blood like carbonation escaping a shaken bottle, forming bubbles in his joints, his lungs, his brain. Decompression sickness at that severity is not survivable. He had cheated death twice already. The 3rd attempt would be the most technical. The divers fitted him with a diving helmet and guided him through the flooded, upside-down interior of the ship, past the bodies of his crewmates, through the darkness he had been living in for 2.5 days, to a diving bell waiting outside. Harrison lost consciousness during the transfer. The divers kept moving. They got him into the bell, sealed it, and began the slow process of controlled ascent. The internal pressure maintained at depth levels as the bell rose, giving Harrison's body the time it needed to off-gas the nitrogen safely. At the surface, he spent 2 more days in a decompression chamber. Another enclosed space, another dark room, another wait. He emerged with peeling skin, recurring nightmares, insatiable hunger, and no broken bones. His blood pressure was normal. His temperature was normal. The doctors treating him said it openly. They did not have a clean scientific explanation for how he was alive. The carbon dioxide in his air pocket had been building the entire time. By the calculations of diving medicine experts, he had been approximately 4 hours from losing consciousness when Van Heerden's hand touched his. 4 hours. When he was strong enough to be told the truth, the medical staff told him he was the only survivor. All 11 of his crewmates were dead. Harrison had spent 3 days in the dark assuming that the others had made it to the surface, that he alone had been trapped below. He had been grieving himself. He learned that he should have been grieving them. He cried for a long time. The rescue video, released 6 months after the incident, went viral within hours. The dive camera footage of a hand emerging from the darkness of a sunken ship and a diver going rigid with shock, the most unexpected thing he had ever seen. People watched it millions of times. It had the quality of something that shouldn't exist. Harrison Okene said he would never go near the ocean again. In 2015, he became a certified commercial diver. The rescue diver who found him at the bottom of the Atlantic, the man who had come to collect his body and found him alive instead, was the one who presented him with his diploma.